love Bitly. I posted this like link, how your brain is making you run slower.
Mm.
Like right as you were coming, all right, there's 145 clicks on it.
Nice.
So I just shared it to the Rise page, so I'm sure that we get dozens of shares.
So what's the brain doing that's messing with our mind, or that's messing with our body to run?
I have a higher RPE than most people on the planet, I think.
Okay.
Rating of perceived exertion.
Okay.
So your brain will like make you feel physically tired, apparently, and so you won't push yourself. Your brain is tired before your body and muscles actually are.
Wow.
So like a lot of people, when they see the finish line, they will exert themselves and have bursts of energy that defies the traditional wisdom that like your muscles are fatigued. It's more of a mental thing. You see the finish line, you can like just go.
So the finish line is an example of how your body can actually do something even though your mind's saying you're tired.
Right.
But you could have done that maybe a mile ago or 2 miles ago.
So your body, to protect itself from cellular damage from exertion, will like shut itself off. And I think people like, as I posted, people like Amelia Boone or the 3-time world's toughest mudder champ or Hunter McIntyre, like the people I've met in this course of making this movie have excessively low ratings of Amber, even, you know, like, and you, people who like can charge and enjoy the high intensity and don't like feel like it's a fucking nightmare.
Well, how is this measurable? How did you?
They did a bunch of, I don't want to like speak to this because I read through it, but they did,
no, but I mean, is this something that you've actually done some studies and know?
No. I read the link that I shared. I read, so they did tests in labs of people on bikes and stuff, and
okay,
and where I guess there's maybe like the pain test were like a number of 1 to 10 or something, but people would I think fill out so where if they're feeling tired,
right,
and then they could look at the test and be like, the muscles actually have not hit a lactose threshold yet, but your mind is making you feel like it is.
So they're saying, I'm tired, I'm done. But if you look at the muscle, and you could tell, well, physically you could actually probably keep going. You're actually not at your peak right now. Right. Huh. So you think you have you think your brain turns you off.
It's like wimpy man syndrome. Yeah, exactly. I'm a wimp, so yeah.
No, I don't, I think I have that though. That's funny because, we've worked out a couple times together and to be honest, I think that I have that when I'm alone. But I think, maybe this is the thing too, I don't know if the article said it, but like when you're with others or when you're working out with others, maybe it turns off or there's a different perception, like because there's that competition in there.
Yeah, it is. They did talk about that, how people can push themselves past their perceived limits if there's spectators watching.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I find for myself, and I even talk about it in the movie, that exact point, like shared suffering for me, I find myself able to push myself much harder if Sean's looking over my shoulder. Yeah. And I'm on the Aerodyne and he's checking out my RPMs. Like if there's someone watching, I'll like push myself much harder than if I was just alone.
I'm just there by myself. Yeah. Well, like this morning I worked out at 7, and it was just me and one other person, and we were doing 2 different workouts. And maybe it's Monday or whatever it is, but I was just lagging, and so I like hit that wall, and a couple times I almost like, oh, I won't do the last 2 overhead presses, But then there's that thing where like Ryan is right there, and he's like, "Where are you at?" I'm like, "Gosh, I got 2 more," So you keep going. But there was I was alone. I wasn't really competing against anybody else. It was just myself. Yeah, he was watching, but there was nobody else doing my workout. Right. And so I kind of hit that wall and was like, maybe I'll just be done. Yeah. I'm good with what I did already. Right. Now, it's an interesting thing. I'll have to look at that. I'll have to check that article out and see. Because I've just listened. The person that I want to interview next, and we'll jump in here right away. The person I want to interview next is a brain researcher out of St. Helena. Her name is Dr. Arlene Taylor. Mm-hmm. They call her the Brain Lady. Mm-hmm. And she just does, I think she's one of the leading experts on the brain and perceptions that you have on certain things that you do physically and mentally, and the way you decide to do things, and the way you eat and how it affects your brain. And so she was at a conference that I was at this weekend, and we talked afterwards, and I'm going to interview her in a couple of weeks. But some of the stuff she was talking about is cool, so it's I'll read that article and see if I can pull out some more questions for her out of that. But yeah. All right, so I think I'm going to start this. It's 3:43. I don't want to keep you. Thanks for walking me around and showing. And thanks for doing this. It's cool that we're actually getting getting a chance to sit down and talk. I'm excited. Let me pull up my...
I don't want this to like block your sound, so...
Yeah. All right. And
I'm gonna just ditch it. It's fine.
these aren't even really all that important. Like if you that's, I think it's cool for just a visual, just to have.
Okay.
Yeah, that way people are gonna kind of, I don't know, one more thing for them to connect with afterwards. Rise of the Sufferfests and checking out the Facebook page, Instagram, all that. So it's cool to have it out there. All right, now that everything's, I think we're good on audio there. That's going. This guy is going. If I don't get this with all the things that we have going,
you're like, we have the video.
Right. I mean, we got video, we got the Audacity going, we've got the Tascam recorder going. I could probably do something on the iPad, but I'm not going to. I think we'll just stick with this. So, and then I'm gonna do I'll edit in an intro later, so
sure.
All that kind of stuff. So we'll just I'll just jump in with some questions and kind of walk my way through this, see how it goes. So.
Let's wait for that car. I'm on vibrate.
Cool. That thing's on airplane, so we should be good there. It's cool to mention where we are, Boyd Ranch and all that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That mic picks up like just about everything.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
How much was that mic?
You know, it wasn't much. I want to say like $80.
I have a mic, I have like a blue, but it...
Yeah, there's two, right.
So I haven't fucking figured out how to use it.
No, this one's plug and play. I mean, there's not much I've had to do to it other than, you know, if there's like a fan or something in there, it's going to pick it up. It's definitely good with picking stuff up, but just adjust the gain of how it's coming in, and usually it kind of balances out. But as far as like picking up the room, and you could do, I don't know, 5-6 people around it and probably be just fine. So. All right, so here we are, starting this out. Thanks a lot, Scott Keneally, for allowing me the time to sit with you and to talk, and just to hear about your story and about what's going on with you. Super excited about this opportunity. This is my first podcast, first video that we're putting out, and so I'm thankful that you've decided to allow me to cut my chops, you know, here with you.
I need the practice. I'm happy to do it, man.
Sweet. So I just kind of want to jump right in with a topic, and then we'll kind of go back and forth, like kind of do some flashbacks, and then kind of, you know, see how it goes from there. But just to start, I think I have in here a bio, and maybe I'll just kind of read this and then see. This is kind of something you wrote up for yourself, I believe. But I'll read this, and then I kind of want to ask you a question about what you do. Short bio here says, Scott Keneally reports from the trenches of the obstacle race industry. His comedic essay about the first Tough Mudder was on the front of his alt weekly, and his expose about the company was on the cover of Outside magazine. Yes, got both of those. He was consulted. He's consulted with 60 Minutes Sports, and is currently working on an essay for Sports Illustrated. That and the documentary, of course. And then furthermore, as a journalist and misogynist, or rather participant, I'm neck deep in the world of obstacle racing and fun running.
That'd be a masochist.
Masochist. I didn't even read that right, did I? I love how you're just sitting there waiting for me to say that, right? I'm going to leave it in there. I'll read it again. As both a journalist and masochist, or participant, I'm neck deep in the world of obstacle racing and fun running. My adventures have taken me halfway across the world and been featured by my local alt weekly, national magazines, and on Showtime. My humor essay about getting off the couch and tackling my first Tough Mudder, for instance, landed on the cover of the North Bay Bohemian. My investigative feature about the scandalous origins of Tough Mudder made the cover of Outside magazine, which we just showed there. And with a little help from a magazine trailer, I produced that expose, got some people asking if CEO Will Dean is the new Mark Zuckerberg. So you've written on, for many different magazines, you've sort of helped out and consulted for a lot of different shows. If people ask you, What do you do? How do you answer that question?
It's a hard one because for a living, for all these years, I've earned a living as a music video and commercial treatment writer. So I'd work with directors, helping them pitch ideas for music videos for stars like Rihanna and Madonna and Jessica Simpson, whoever the pop star of the moment is.
Right.
I actually have a job working on a Coldplay video tonight.
Sweet.
And that's like, I've been doing a lot less of that lately as I've been working on the film, but I would say I am a gonzo journalist, I guess,
Okay.
which might sound pretentious, but I don't know a better way to describe, what I like doing, which is jumping into a world or and coming back with a story, or like experiential humor. There's some
Right.
people like AJ Jacobs who I love his writing. It's he'll like take on a task like the year of living biblically.
Yeah.
And that will
And just go full into it.
Right.
With no excuses, just do it all.
Right. So I think I'm really interested in different types of cultures and communities. So I don't know what will happen next, but I think when I frame it, I'd say I'm a writer and a filmmaker.
Nice. So along with that then, kind of your story, if we take it back a few years, you're sitting in front of a computer and you're looking at YouTube videos for a thing called the Tough Mudder. And did it kind of start off of you, for one, what the question is, why were you looking at them? Did you just happen upon them? And then how did that turn into, maybe I'll do a story on this?
I had a friend who showed me the video and said, we got to do this. Unfortunately, he was under house arrest and had a freaking ankle thing on. So he couldn't do the first one. I looked at the calendar, I was like, this would be a really funny story. Because I am a wimp. I've not the Tough Mudder alpha type guy. So I didn't wait for him to get off of probation or whatever the hell he was on.
Right.
And so
house arrest, yeah.
So I think he showed me in July of 2011, and then the first Tough Mudder that I had access to was September in Lake Tahoe, and I just went from like being pretty sedentary to running all the time, and which was great news to my wife, who was a personal trainer.
Right.
She finally saw something that lit a fire under my ass. It was having this goal of doing this Tough Mudder, and if I didn't think I could come back with an epic profile picture or a story, I'm not totally sure I would have done it. Right.
What was it about? I mean, was it just the story, kind of like, oh, this will be something good for me to write about? Or was there something that you're looking at the videos and you're like, there was something inside you just kind of intrigued about the idea of doing this? Because you also say, I think somewhere in one of your articles, that you're pain averse.
Yeah. So it was really for the ego stroke of the story, and not, there wasn't like, I'm seeing some primal thing within me that, those kinds of revelations I think have happened through the course of making this film. And then where I can relate to some things that maybe on the surface, for me, I think my entry point was narcissism.
Yeah.
And there was definitely nothing more like am I a beta male in a world where masculinity is not prized, and am I reclaiming that? No, it was, let me make people laugh.
Yeah. And so prior to this, I mean, your wife's a personal trainer, so you're pretty physically fit before this. You guys are working out all the time. You're in gyms all the time. You're like ready to go do this.
No, definitely not. She was physically fit. Me, I've always had like sudden bursts of inspiration to work out. Like I'll get into mountain biking, and so I'll like really get into that for a couple months, and then it starts raining, and then I'm like,
right.
Fuck it.
Right.
And then, or, like periodically I would, get excited about working out, but it never ever stuck.
Mm-hmm.
I call myself a just enougher. Like I'll do just enough to maintain the appearance of fitness, so I don't look like I've let myself go.
Right.
But I've never actually had, up until recently, this kind of inner calling toward fitness.
What do you think that was, kind of along the way of just, I mean, was that something growing up that you just weren't into it physically? Was that something physically about you, knees, shoulders, whatever, some injury? Why was it only just enough?
I don't know. I come from a family, my uncle played, like, it was a star linebacker at Penn State. My cousin was like the defensive player of the year in New Jersey, and he went on to Penn State to play linebacker.
Oh.
My brother played pro football in Canada. Like, so they're I came from a tough family. But
well, and you played football too.
I did, but you know, not at that level.
Right.
I had what they called potential.
Sure.
Which means I was a big kid, but like I was, you know, hit someone, Keneally, like quit pussyfooting around. Like,
right.
you know, I was not like the leader of the team by any means. So
well, how tall? You're what, 6 foot?
Almost 5, 6'4" and 3/4.
Okay. And in high school,
like
are
215.
you? Okay.
And strong, but
sure.
But soft, like
right. Yeah.
Mentally soft.
Yeah. Okay, so you're you want to do the Tough Mudder. It's definitely an ego thing. You want to get the picture on your Facebook, your Instagram feed, whatever. You want to write a good story about it. And you were looking at that. You were going to do the September Tough Mudder in Tahoe or Squaw Valley or which?
Yeah,
Tahoe?
in Squaw Valley.
Squaw Valley. So what? How long did you have to train, and how did you immerse yourself in that?
I had a couple months. I went out to Lake Sonoma. Did a 5-mile loop that I occasionally had done with Amber, but did that 5 days a week. I would occasionally go to her circuit training class at Vertex Rock Climbing Gym in Santa Rosa.
Yeah.
But I say occasionally because it seemed like the class was designed to make me puke. Like I didn't like pushing myself as hard as she was. I was the kid who after a half hour I'm like gassed and like laying like sprawled out on the floor, huffing and puffing and making a fool of myself pretty much. So I would do that occasionally. She wished I did it more, but so that was it. It was just her classes and then also running at Lake Sonoma.
Mm-hmm. Take a little pause there for.
It's going well.
Yeah. How far are we into this right now? A few minutes. Is that a car going by down a different road? No, it's almost done. I don't even know where exactly I am in my notes, but we'll just keep rolling with. I kind of know.
You were asking how I trained.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
All right. So you're training. I mean, you're definitely picking it up now from before. I mean, you're throwing in a bunch of stuff, doing some running, doing some cross training and stuff, trying to get ready for this thing. So, and your friend wasn't doing it with you. So he's on house arrest. He's got the ankle bracelet.
Yeah.
So are you going with anybody that you know, or are you just going alone?
I went alone.
Went alone.
Yeah.
Never had any experience in this before. You'd heard maybe about it online, but no any friends that had done it besides.
No, I didn't know anyone that had done it. So
only the guy that's saying, I think we should do this.
Yeah. So it's a different like time now, and not to take anything away. Tough Mudder is still freaking amazing, but at the time, I didn't know anyone who had been through the electrical wires and stuff.
Right.
So it was like,
this is 2011.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
This is before Tough Mudder was Tough Mudder.
Yeah.
And so very few. I didn't know anyone. I don't think I knew anyone that had done it.
Okay.
And so like you see the videos and they're so aggressive and like holy cow. So
yeah.
I was really really scared, like to the bone, like terrified.
Yeah.
Watching like Rocky 4 the night before.
That's right.
To try to like
yourself up.
Psych myself up.
Yeah.
So
and
then of course I'm
back walking through the snow and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like I may have watched Braveheart as well, and I feel like I definitely cried watching those shows. So those
that's
movies.
the soft side of you.
Yeah.
Out, right. There's some emotional parts of those, though. Well, I'll give you that. But so you show up and you compete in this, and so it's 11 miles for basically 11 miles. How many obstacles are you going through?
25 obstacles probably.
What's your time frame? And they say it's not a race. They say it's just to get through it, whatever. But I mean, how long does this take you? And
it took me quite a long time. They say like 3.5 hours. I think I was out there for more like 6. Part of it is like at mile 5 maybe, I was running downhill fast, picking up time because I was walking uphill, and I like strained what I thought I just blew out my knee, but it was like my AT band.
Okay.
Which happened the first couple of Tough Mudders from just putting for the first time real strain running downhill, like at a fast clip, and so I ended up hobbling for like the last 7 miles of that first Tough Mudder, and I felt like there was someone shaking a can of quarters, like that's what my knee like sounded and felt like to me.
Oh man, just crackling and popping. And...
Yeah, so I was limping a lot, or one hopping to keep moving at a relative speed, but yeah, it was. And
then there's a picture of you in the I think in the Outside magazine waiting to go through the electrical wires.
Yeah.
You know, and so this is the thing about Tough Mudder, is they're actually dangling live electrical wires for you to run through.
Right.
To choose to run through.
Right.
So what's that like, facing that and getting ready to run through that your first time?
You're watching people run through and scream and fall down and face plant and like scream. I mean, it was like, I'm about to do, like, what, really? I can't. Is
it enough current to actually knock you on your butt, or is this?
Oh yeah. I mean, some people get hit in just the right way, or maybe get hit with two at once.
Yeah.
But there's a fair number of people who will go up, like, black out and like wake up with their face in the mud. And you could look at some of the blooper reels of this, and you're like, oh my God, Jesus, that looks awful.
Yeah. So you go through it though.
Yeah, I went through it, and ended up with a pretty cool picture from it, which is definitely in the movie.
Yeah.
So it was. I mean, the feeling at the end of it was something that I don't know that I'd ever really experienced.
At the end of the race.
Yeah, just the amount of fear and pain you have to overcome, especially if you hurt yourself and like you're just limping to the end, and then like the ice water obstacle was miserable. Mm-hmm. Electricity, jumping off of walk the plank into very, very cold, glacier runoff.
Yeah.
High Sierra Lake.
Right.
All that stuff, I hadn't had those experiences in my life really. So
right.
The feeling of accomplishment when you cross that line, it's not like I felt like, oh, my first instinct wasn't great, I got the picture, or I got the great story. It was like this, wow, holy shit, I did that. That's cool. So like, and I think that's why a lot of people do these events.
Sure. So I mean, the motivation for starting it wasn't there at the end of the event. It was something that you hadn't really felt before, you hadn't really experienced before, and is that kind of like a high? Is that kind of like euphoric and just being there like that? And,
I felt like a king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, so along the way, you're researching this for a personal sort of humorist essay, which you end up writing in the Bohemian. But at what point do you begin to discover that there's something else to this story, that there's something more going on here?
I think when I was in Lake Tahoe, maybe 2 days before the race, I went to the public library at Kings Beach, and they had internet, and I was just researching Tough Mudder as much as I could, just for background details, mm-hmm. to develop my pitch, which I was hoping to pitch to Men's Health or GQ or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And while doing that, I saw a story by Forbes that said Tough Guy gets credit as, it was a small story, but Tough Guy is the original or something like that. I forget what the headline was, but
yeah.
I read it, and I didn't think much of it until I looked in the comment section. And then I read, my mind was blown when I looked at the comments, because there was a very clear war happening between Tough Mudder headquarters and Mr. Mouse of Tough Guy. They were just lobbing insults and accusations at one another. And so I realized there was, like, wow, so whoever this Tough Guy is probably pissed off that Tough Mudder's this big thing over here. So I reached out to the original guy and just said, just feeling out. I'd never done investigative journalism at all.
Sure.
And he essentially opened up a can of worms for me.
Yeah.
And so once I kind of knew there was a lawsuit to look at and legal docs and things of public record,
okay.
I jumped in the rabbit hole and pitched it to Outside Magazine and spent, a long time researching and reporting. And it was a developing story because Tough Mudder also sued another company, Savage Race, for the same thing Tough Guy sued Tough Mudder for.
Oh, wow.
IP.
Yeah. Intellectual property, stealing ideas of the course, of the obstacles, of the whole scheme,
right.
all of it together.
And at the time, Tough Mudder and Spartan Race were in a pretty bitter, bitter or petty kind of war with each other.
Well, maybe just for those listening, what's the point to sue? I mean, there's thousands of mud runs, right? I mean, little mom and pop, little community mud runs. I mean, was Spartan, Tough Guy, Tough Mudder, is it significant enough to sue for? Are these big money? I mean,
it's like a $500 million industry, of which Mr. Mouse, the originator, has a $50,000 share of it.
Wow.
So he invented it. He started it from his perspective, as you could read in the story.
Yeah.
Tough Mudder stole his idea under, maybe false pretense of it being part of a Harvard Business School paper.
Yeah, well, what I'll do in the show notes, I'll put a link to the Outside magazine because you break it all down kind of in there, and people can kind of go back through and I think see where he got his idea from, how he pitched it to the business school and all that. I'm kind of curious if you want to kind of go down some other routes, like who's Mr. Mouse? Tough Mudder and these other ones that we know here in the U.S. Have kind of picked up maybe as a result of this guy who you end up finding out about, Mr. Mouse, who's got the original Tough Guy in the UK, and this is kind of where it maybe all started, which probably, maybe now, but maybe back then nobody even knew about that.
Correct.
So who is Mr. Mouse?
He's a former barber, former Grenadier Guardsman. He was a former marathon promoter. He's a 78-year-old man who is one of the true eccentrics on this earth.
Yeah.
He's a philosopher. He's a deep thinker. He has a real ethos behind Tough Guy and why he created this. It wasn't like to make money, whereas maybe some of the other companies that are out there, it might be more about that.
Yeah.
Even if they don't make it seem like it is.
Mm-hmm.
But for Mr. Mouse,
for him, there's a philosophy behind it. There's
absolutely.
a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
You've done countless Spartan races, Tough Mudders, and even which we'll get to, the world's toughest Mudder, which you recently completed. What's so special about Tough Guy?
To me, I really appreciate how non-commercial it feels. I mean, the whole place it kind of looks like a shanty town in a way. There's just stuff everywhere, and the house has like rooms that have no point to them and doors, and he keeps building on it. And then the course itself is this it's a permanent course, and it evolves each year.
This is his property, right?
This is on his property, right?
Farm in the UK, and
yep.
He just he leaves it up there. He doesn't take stuff down.
Doesn't take it right.
It just grows and grows. And
exactly. So it's like, in a sense, like the whole thing is like the Winchester Mystery House.
Right. Yeah.
And so, to me, I like the fact that it doesn't, the branding is mediocre at best. It's not like, what can we sell to the competitor other than this experience? Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, I love all the I love everything that Tough Mudder, Spartan Race, or these other races we put out, the posters, the shirts. Yeah. I appreciate all that, but I also like the fact that this just feels like from another era. It feels like old, like William Wallace old, like you expect people to be running out of the woods,
right?
Like with freaking battle axes,
right? Being chased by guys with 6 foot long swords.
Yeah, it feels like a Viking, like village essentially. Yeah. And so I appreciate that, and then also the main challenge, the main obstacle of it is the cold. So you're really, it's a race against hypothermia.
So is this just once a year that he does this?
He does a summer one, but that's not like what Tough Guy really is.
So Tough Guy really is the January,
yes,
right? The January event. So there's snow on the ground, or
sometimes. Yeah, there was. Ice, snow. I'm hoping for that. I'm heading back in 2 weeks.
You're hoping for like the worst experience.
I am. It's so weird, but yeah, I want it to be the coldest year yet.
And I think I read. I mean, how many people do the January event? How many runners participate in that?
It's been like 3,000 to 5,000 probably.
And of that, there's somewhere like a few hundred, right, that get hypothermia and don't finish the event, right?
Right.
So I mean, a good portion of the participants can't even make it through.
Correct.
Right. Man, tough guy. I got to check out more about that guy and see that. So, so you meet Mr. Mouse. You find out about this kind of the backstory. You write this expose, this article kind of exposing. You call, you ask the question rather: is Will Dean the next Mark Zuckerberg? In other words, stealing an idea from somebody else, and kind of blow that story kind of open. Which it's a great story. And again, we'll put the link to that. but then it seems like it takes on another chapter, another gear here where you kind of change, and now you're doing a lot of these, and it seems like you begin to ask the question, why is everybody doing this? Is that what, I mean, what kind of questions started coming up in your mind that kind of brought you into making a film about it?
I'd like to say it was like my original curiosity, but I think it was just late night whiskey conversations with Mark Morford. He's a culture critic for SF Chronicles, SF Gate.
Okay.
This kid Dan Hill, who started Ragnar Relay and Electric Run, and now Rise Festival. We were on a panel together in San Antonio for the Sport and Social Industry Association, and I clicked with him pretty quick. And he is a thinker, and I think at the time I was gravitating towards doing a book or a documentary just about Mr. Mouse.
Okay.
And these conversations I had with Mark Morford or other friends who would ask me, because people outside this world would be like, why are you doing this? And so I think that question, kept sticking. And then the curiosity, I went beyond just a movie about Mr. Mouse or a book about Mr. Mouse to a larger, more investigative look at the reasons behind this, the rise of these Sufferfests.
Yeah. So, because that is the question. Like a lot of people would ask, why would you run through, live electrical wires? Why would you crawl under barbed wire? Why would you choose to jump over fire? Burn your legs, or go through an event, some that you've done, where the challenge for missing an obstacle is however many burpees you got to do, and some of those you've done hundreds of burpees for not. And so, this annihilates people. Right? Totally. And the question is, why are we going to do this? And why?
Right.
And it seems that they're not going away, right? Is that,
Yeah, I think this is definitely here to stay. I think it will evolve into a sport that you may see in the Olympics in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And I don't really see, I think Tough Mudder will be around as well. I hope to do that with Raleigh, someday.
So not only are people doing it, but more are doing it. Not only are... So much that, I even started my own mud run, a few years back. And the draw for that, the people that are willing to come out and do it and participate in it and suffer, right? Because, people are walking away, at minimum, they're walking away with a bunch of skinned knees, Sometimes their ego hurt a little bit because they weren't able to do something. At maximum, some people have died doing this. Right?
Yeah.
And everything in between. Mm-hmm. So as you're starting to do this, and you're calling it a Sufferfest, this shared experience, people getting together and suffering. What are some of the questions that you begin to ask people to try and get to the bottom of why people are doing this?
I guess the way the doc works is I think I had, in just talking to people, some ideas of what could be happening in culture or modern life, and then there was the months of trying to identify what talking heads I wanted to speak to things. Mm-hmm. Reading a lot of books, listening to a ton of podcasts, trying to figure out who's the best person to talk to, what was kind of like, not necessarily my hypotheses, but what I had distilled down to be like maybe the main causes of this. And,
sure.
And so what I'm about to say aren't like my ideas per se, but
you had some ideas of origins, and you wanted to then start to find some people to flesh those out.
Right. But I don't know that they were I don't know that I was looking at the world and thinking there's a masculinity crisis and making that, cognitive leap.
Sure.
But I think maybe once I started really understanding that this is a huge phenomenon, that there's something deeper happening, I think maybe I did start like looking around and thinking about why are we disconnected? Are we lonely? Are we removed from Earth? Are we too protected? So it's hard to like really honestly say where where that came from, or where some of the ideas came from, or why I decided to explore this or that. Like It's been this menagerie of conversations I've had with people.
So, but through this process, you've I mean, you've interviewed, you've met with and talked about this idea of the rise of the Sufferfests to, I don't know, hundreds of people maybe. I mean, it seems like a good share of people. And maybe just, I mean, you could give a list, but maybe what types of people have you been talking to?
So I wanted a good cross section of people to interview. So from someone like Laird Hamilton, who understands the importance of fear, who lives on that razor's edge of fear. Talked to him about, that. He was one of my favorite interviews. Spending time with him, and so he had a lot to say. He's throughout the documentary.
I mean, this is the guy that's surfed the biggest waves in the world.
Yeah, he's a demigod.
Yeah,
a surf legend.
Yeah.
John Durant wrote the Paleo Manifesto. We should wait. Feel free to cut the my last, trying to figure out how I came up with the ideas.
Okay.
I'm like, I'm lost in the woods here.
Okay. I'll edit some stuff.
So maybe like where you could start it with is what kinds of questions were you asking, and what people did you?
Yeah.
What did you find, or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, I can cut to this line that we're on right now of what types of people were you finding to interview, and instead of giving a list, but yeah. So Laird Hamilton, Paleo Manifesto, the author of that.
So ask the question.
So along the way, you could give a list of all the people, but basically just what types of people are you wanting to talk to, and flesh out some ideas with. Who are you looking to have on this film?
I wanted to have a good cross section of talking heads. I wanted a behavioral psychologist. I wanted an athlete who pushes himself to the extreme because he has to. Someone like Laird Hamilton. I wanted someone to speak to masculinity. I wanted someone to speak to our relationship to with technology, because I think those were some of the things that I had figured were helping drive this phenomenon. So I found a really great selection of people who are willing to contribute their thoughts and ideas to the film.
Who along the way, who's somebody that surprised you? Like, that's not what you were thinking when you went to meet with them, to interview them, either personality or their contribution to the ideas of what's going on.
Hannah Rosen, who wrote The End of Men, was one of my most fascinating interviews. One of the things she talked about was how gender roles have been switching in pop culture. And she talked about the Hunger Games, and how Katniss is the hunter and she's the provider, and Peeta is like the romantic and the baker.
Right.
And I had not thought about that at all. And she also talks about the Old Spice Man versus the Marlboro Man. It's freaking funny. And I hugged her after the interview. There's several times throughout the interview where she was saying things, and I was like, "Can I hug you?"
Right.
And she's like this, she's this established professional woman living in DC with her husband and kids, and I just had this sudden fanboy of her. It was amazing. And in the test screens we've done with the film, I ended up adding more of her because universally everyone was like, she was great.
Wow.
So
is that just people like, because those things, you've seen the Hunger Games, you've seen those ideas, but then to actually associate it with a gender shift or something, you're like, oh yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I was not that analytical with the Hunger Games when I was watching it or reading the book, Right. I was like, wow, right, duh.
Yeah. Anybody else that either surprised you or that, I mean, you talked about Laird Hamilton was somebody you really wanted to interview, and sitting with him was super cool. And anybody else that's just kind of like an icon or idol of yours that you, because of this journey now, you've kind of got a chance to sit down with? And
I'm sitting down with Morgan Spurlock later this week. He's the last interview, so he is a hero of mine. So I think that's going to be pretty much one of the highs of the journey.
What's a question that you're asking him? I mean, you're going to sit down with him. What are you hoping he'll contribute to it?
So he has 3 really great movies that touch upon my themes. So masculinity crisis. He has a documentary called Mansom in which he explored modern masculinity. The obesity epidemic. One of the things I pose is this a reaction to our sedentary society in which we're just getting fat and sick, and people are trying to opt out of that bad health future by taking up CrossFit or fitness or Tough Mudder. And Morgan has obviously wrote and directed Super Size Me.
Yeah.
And then we also The Greatest Movie Ever Sold.
It's a great movie.
I loved it. I've seen it a half dozen times.
Yeah.
But I think that ties well into personal branding, you know, because a lot of people who do these things, myself included, you know, Mud is my brand, you know.
Right.
That's, if you go to my Facebook wall, it's the only narrative I've had for the last 5 years, other than fatherhood and, you know, my marriage. So
yeah, no, that's cool. Some of these big just people that are recognizable in their name, in what they do and their material and stuff, their thoughts, how they've touched the world. It's just awesome through this journey now that you're getting a chance to meet with them.
And Laird Hamilton I was deeply affected by the time with Laird.
And that was going to be, you know, him or anybody else. Who do you think had the most impact on you? Either the way you think, the way you act.
I think, you know, maybe Laird, just because I saw at the time when I met him, I had already started this. I had a son, and I was already committed to like really wanting to get into shape and stuff. And then I see Laird, who's 52 or something, and he's like in peak physical, mental, spiritual health.
Yeah.
And it comes across, and he was so generous and everything with his time, and
wow.
he didn't know me from anyone really.
Yeah.
And to have spent that time with him, to pick his brain, and he had a lot of fascinating insights, and I was humbled and honored, and I saw someone where I'd like to be in 15 years. Like if I were to like have the discipline and to really dedicate myself to being a fucking badass, like Laird is. He's the guy. He's the guy you want to follow. So,
and yet in the same, I mean, as I hear you talk, not only is he that, but he was humble. He's welcoming you into his home and his world.
Right.
And so, I mean, balance, you know, of all of it. You say spiritually, mentally, physically, all of it.
Right. And this is not to. I should point out that James Appleton, Amelia Boone, and Hunter McIntyre, they're all among the top athletes in this sport.
Yeah.
Being around them as well is like incredibly inspiring for a series of different reasons. James Appleton is a 3-time tough guy champ, and he is definitely one of the heroes of the movie, and he's wildly talented. He has his moral. I joke like he has very high. His moral fiber has like the highest of thread counts. Like he's just a really really good person, I've enjoyed getting to know him, and I'm inspired by him. And Amelia Boone, 3-time tough guy champ. She works at Apple right now.
Yeah.
She's an attorney. You know, she's like a superhero.
Is that what you? I mean, obviously there's some professionals in the sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is that what you see? Are these weekend warriors? Are these people that have something that they do for job, for money, whatever else, that's completely removed from that environment, but they spend time in that environment, whether it's, you know, for training, and then competing in the events?
Well, I think the masses are weekend warriors.
Yeah.
The top athletes, there are very few that are doing it. But actually, I think a lot of them are trying to do it professionally, so they'll have side jobs or personal training and stuff.
So that they can do that more.
Very few have a job like Amelia, where you work 60 hours a week, and are still able to podium and win races and big races. So she's one of the rare exceptions of someone like Hunter McIntyre or James Appleton. Not to take anything away from them, they train. This is their life. They train full time, and they treat this like a NFL player treats.
They're a professional athlete.
Yeah, there are a lot of those people who train like pros.
What a crazy spectrum. I mean, mud runs, right? That it has the weekend warrior person who's never been maybe physical in their life, all the way now, you know, relatively new sporting event, right? And it's got professionals like in the sport.
And TV deals and multiple TV deals.
Yeah, and apparel and shoes, all the stuff, just like any other sport, football, baseball.
There's a new show coming out this spring, a Spartan Race team competition show on NBC, I think in prime time, like American Ninja Warrior style. I think it's called Spartan Race, in which Spartan pros have a team of 4. They train them up as best they can, and they go through and they compete for prize money. But it's like a reality team competition show. So it's like brand awareness and the reach of this thing is like it hasn't even crested yet.
Wow. So we'll come back a little bit maybe to the film, and you're working on that. You're kind of finishing up. I want to come back to that. But shift gears just a little bit. What about Scott Keneally? What have you learned about yourself? Not in so much doing the story, but in competing in these events. You've done, I don't know how many Spartan races you've done, Tough Mudder, Tough Guy, Warrior Dash is another one, and there's some others. Recently you've just done, maybe you could talk to that too, the world's toughest mudder, 50-mile.
It's world's toughest mudder. Well, here, let's back up. What I've learned, I've learned a lot through this journey about myself. It started off with I'm a narcissist, that being reinforced. And then as I kept doing it, so my the first Spartan race I did with my wife, she practically dragged me across the finish line.
Really?
And I had been running a lot, and she didn't run at all, but she did high intensity circuit training. And so I thought I was going to blow her away because I was running 8 miles a day, on a treadmill.
Right.
And so I get to this Spartan race in Malibu. It's a 3-mile race, and it kicked my ass. I remember the first hill climb, I'm sprinting up past people, and cut to a mile later, and Amber's like, "Come on, let's go." And I'm like, "What's the big rush?" And she's like, "We've got more people to pass." And I'm like, "Oh God, please no."
And you're just gassed.
Yeah, because you make me do 2 burpees, and it's it. I'm
right.
My arms are about to fall off. So, so there I learned this kind of training I'm doing wasn't really that helpful.
Okay.
And then the next time I did a Spartan race was a year later, and it was a 3-mile course, and I walked off the course 2 miles in.
Really?
I couldn't imagine going any further. I bonked out.
Wow.
Hardcore. I was 117 burpees deep into the experience, and I left, and I walked off in deep, deep shame, and I was really, really humiliated. And I felt like a weak, I had no mental grit at all, and fortunately, as a humorist, within 10 minutes, I was because I'm feeling the world has collapsed on me, because at this point I'm a bit of a recognizable figure on the Spartan circuit.
Sure.
And
you're putting it out there that you were working on the film at that time?
Yeah.
Right.
And I had launched a very high profile, not high profile enough, or a Kickstarter campaign where, I think I'm going to be this hero to this community, the guy that tells the story. I'm right. Your Hunter Thompson people. Yeah. And then I failed the Kickstarter miserably. And then the next day, that weekend, I did this Spartan race. And I'm on the rope climb. It's in the festival area. There's people cheering me on, rise to the Sufferfests. And I'm at the top knot. And the way it works out, there were several knots, and there's a bell you have to ring that's 25 feet up. I'm at the top knot, and the bell is out of reach. And I'm a tall guy.
Yeah.
So I would have to ring the bell. I'd have to hoist myself up just another inch or 2.
That close.
So I was that close, and so everyone's yelling, "You could do this!" And I'm the only one on the rope at this point. Gosh. I went with the elite heat, which was ridiculous because I was getting passed by women within the mile and a half in. I'm getting chicked. Yeah. And so they're yelling, "You could do this! You could do this!" And I'm just I know you guys are meanwhile in my head I'm just shh.
Right.
I want to disappear right now. And I knew I couldn't do it, but I gave it my best, and I swiped at it and missed and fell from the top into the water. And
it's 30 feet or 20
feet? It's 25 feet,
yeah.
And I've never seen that before. I don't think very many people do that.
Right.
Fall from the top of the freaking rope. And I remember being underwater and just wanting to stay there forever. Hoping a sinkhole could just open up and just suck me down. And I got up, and then I went to another obstacle, and at this point I'd do the burpees, and I was just so humiliated. And then I went to the Herc hoist, and I spent forever on that obstacle, and there's people around me telling me how to wrap it around myself, and I look like I'm being
everybody's got an idea
strangled by a boa constrictor, and there's photos of me just looking like I'm being all twisted up, and it was after that I failed that, and then I did some of the burpees, 17 of them or something, and then I was I'm done. I felt like I was going to pass out. So back to this. So 10 minutes later, I'm walking in the car, and I'm really feeling just shell-shocked.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, you could pitch a story to Outside about this, which I did. And it was probably the thing that maybe the most people have read. It was shared over 20,000 times on social media.
Wow.
By Spartan Race. And so that, there was a good came out of it.
good came out of it.
Yeah.
But there was this time though, maybe that whole weekend where a big thing that you were trying to get funding for the documentary. You were trying to launch a campaign to get some backers. That didn't even come close, right? Like that was. I mean, I was just saying, not that I'm trying to beat this in, but that was pretty bad.
No, I fell like over $250,000 short of my expectations and goal.
Yeah.
And this is the time like when you could get $55,000 for making egg salad. Like a dude made $50-something thousand for egg salad from like 7,000 backers. And so considering how big this like world is, I was like sure I was
and the community is huge for the mud run community. The people that are doing
and they're passionate. And I was like, the night before, you know, $297,000 is a big ask. I understand. I have no fucking track record whatsoever in doing this. So like, I get it. Like,
sure.
People, you know, and so the night before I launched the campaign, Amber's like, what do you think, you know, 297, you sure? Should we just ask for 100? And like, she's like, what do you think the chance of us not getting that are? And I was like, 0%, hun. 0.
Yeah, you were confident.
Overconfident. And then one of the producers who like gave me a little bit of seed money to kick things off, he was like, "Are you sure?" You know, and I was like, "Go big or go home." Well, I went home. So
have you? I mean, as a few minutes later from not finishing the race, you kind of turned this into a good thing, but. What did that do to you to kind of feel that sense of failure? I mean, I've had those moments where something you put your heart and soul into, and it can be really devastating, and it can kind of stop you in your tracks and not get you to move forward. So,
yeah, at that point I had no choice but to keep moving forward. Like I had borrowed and begged enough money from people. Like so, this is before I launched the Indiegogo the day that the DNF at the Spartan race happened.
Okay.
Because I knew I just couldn't. I could try, like maybe if I bought 60 more days of crowdfunding, I could get a national news story about the thing. Like I just knew like if I just kept moving forward, I could just make this thing happen somehow.
Yeah.
And so, but I was like, really deeply humiliated and scared for my future, really. And a few weeks later, so we launched the Indiegogo campaign. It's going okay. Most of the people had stepped back up to the plate, but a few weeks later, I find out that Amber's pregnant, which to me was like the worst possible time, you know, because I would have waited another 10 years if I could have bought 10 years, but I had this other baby that I'd been put all this time into, and I had no idea how I was going to hatch that. So I was at a real honest low in my life between failing it on the mental side, like the Kickstarter. Like I always figured I could think my way into something that makes it go viral and make the money.
Yeah.
And then failing physically
at the race.
the race, and then I felt like a spiritual failure because I'm about to become a father.
But you're not.
But I
ready
can't
for
do.
it.
Yeah, I'm not ready for this. Like how I don't know where I'm getting rent is a prayer each month.
You're barely making it right now. How are you going to provide for this new life you're bringing forward?
Totally. And that's where the shift happened. Finding out I was going to become a dad.
Yeah.
Because there's no way around that. Like I knew, that's happening, and I knew I didn't want to be lazy. I didn't want to be the kind of guy that didn't have like the grit to finish a race that, there's 4,500 other people that are finishing this race on this day, and I'm walking off in despair.
Yeah.
So I knew like fatherhood would feel less frightening if I was physically fit enough to like. I don't want to be the guy, the lazy dad who like is like go outside and play. Like I wanted to be the guy who's like running around with the paintball.
Yeah.
And I wanted to appreciate fatherhood, and I think being unfit mentally and physically, I was going to resent it and have a miserable life. So
the shift you're talking about then wasn't so much a shift in the documentary, the film, but a shift in you of just not wanting to do it maybe in a narcissistic way to get the recognition, but you just wanted to do this to be able to be a dad.
Right.